This episode is not sponsored, but we encourage you to help support the small businesses, charities and organisations that we mention.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Our Circle. I'm Rhiannon.
And I'm Jess.
And today we are joined by one of our dearest friends, a physiotherapist and trauma ward manager, Chloe.
Yay!
Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. We're very, very excited to have you. We're obviously excited to have you, and we'll have you back many, many times, hopefully, if you will be so kind to join us, just because obviously you're one of our closest friends, but also you have such an important job that we want the world really and all of our listeners to sort of know more about. And we just really want your experience and your knowledge and facts and everything you have to sort of tell us about what it's been like working in a hospital during COVID. So a little trigger warning, I guess, for listeners who are a bit sensitive to everything that's been going on. We completely understand, and we don't want anyone to feel bad listening to our podcast. That's not our intention, but we do want to educate everyone on what is happening. This is a real thing that is happening. It's not a hoax. It's been affecting everyone in the worst ways, and we just really want Chloe to tell us everything about that. But to start that off, I guess we just want to know and introduce you to everyone and what you do. So how did you get into physiotherapy for a start? Because I don't actually know this.
It's really funny actually, because I didn't originally want to be a physiotherapist.
What did you want to be?
I had got my heart set on being a midwife.
Oh, of course. Yeah, sorry. I was trying to remember for ages. I was like, I know it wasn't physiotherapy, but what was it?
Midwife. So for some reason, I just sort of loved the idea. Obviously, I've been in the kind of medical field with St John for a while, and it's such a lovely thing to do. Obviously, there are not so great sides of it as well, but all in all, it is a lovely job. So I was sort of telling my family, I've decided this is what I'm going to do. And my granddad turned around and said, really? Are you sure you're going to be a midwife? Why don't you be a physiotherapist? I'm sure that's more your sort of bag. And I was like, oh, thanks.
Really? This all came from your granddad?
Yeah, it did actually. Yeah, he was really passionate about it. And he said, you've had physio, you're sporty, you're medical, like it makes sense. I thought, well, okay, listen to your
Thanks,
granddad.
Granddad.
Yeah, I did a bit of research and actually found that physio is not just massage and sports injuries. It's very much in the medical side. You go into hospitals, you're on wards.
Can you explain actually what physiotherapy is to people? Like, because I mean, I've never had physiotherapy before.
I haven't either, no.
Yeah, so I think the main side that everyone knows about is obviously the injury and sports injury side of it. And that's actually a very small side of physiotherapy.
Right.
And actually you can work as an inpatient physiotherapist on the wards in a hospital. And that could be rehabilitating patients after strokes. That could be after injuries such as fractures, etc., which is more what I do. And polytraumas. And then you've got the respiratory side of things. So that's more about trying to encourage patients to cough, getting rid of sputum, optimizing their oxygenation, things like that. So it's a lot of sort of medical side of things rather than just sports massage.
I mean, I know obviously you could almost just say yes, you could guess this from the name of like physical therapy, physiotherapy. It's obviously going to be something to sort of rehabilitate the body in some ways. But I think, like you said, you do naturally sort of think injury, like as in sports injury or something.
Yeah, definitely, which is fair enough, because that's kind of what the media portray it to be. And obviously we are on call and having to do respiratory on calls and respiratory weekends, and people sort of thinking, why do you need an on-call massage therapist in a hospital? But it's definitely not that.
Right.
So we are dealing with quite sick patients, if that's the kind of side of physio you want to go into. And obviously there are lots and lots and lots of different other variations of where you can go in with physiotherapy, but they're kind of the main ones really. So I looked into it and then thought, actually this sounds good. And then I managed to get some work experience in a paediatric intensive care unit at St Thomas's, which was amazing.
Wow.
And that really was seeing the sickest of babies, and very much respiratory, neuro-based, looking at their range of movement in their joints, making sure they're not retaining secretions, sort of keeping the airways clear as possible.
So was that an observation sort of placement, or you were actually having to do the...
No. So I think I was 16, so it was very much observational to see if I sort of liked that sort of side of things. And then after that, I thought, actually, no, this is probably my bag. So obviously then applied to university, but that was kind of how I got into it. So thanks, Grandad.
Wow. So you mentioned that you were part of St. John's Ambulance, and I actually always remember you, for some reason. I have that in my memory as you being part of St. John's Ambulance. Do you feel like that helped influence the path to physio, and did it prepare you in any way? Do you think it gave you some tools?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's potentially why I ended up going down the physio route, is that I do enjoy the medical side of things, as strange as it sounds, and sort of making patients get better and looking after them is what I wanted to do. And obviously doing that in St. John, I was used to that on the sports field and more the first aid kind of things, but it got that communication between me and patients happening really early. So then when I did go to university, I was used to sort of seeing patients, not knowing who they were, but trying to get them better as quick as possible, and communicating with them. So I think it really did help. And I think that's why I obviously went down the physio route, because of that as well.
Was that common with your fellow students? Like they had previous experience like with things like St. John's Ambulance, or was that quite niche to you?
I think it was quite niche. Yeah, a lot of people were the physio students hadn't done any kind of medical side of things before.
Oh, interesting.
So a lot of them were going into it for the sports side of things, and actually me being me was very much medical. So I think I was one of the only ones, but it definitely helped me. Just learning even things like the vital signs, how to approach a patient, all of that I already knew. So that really helped in the initial stages of university.
I think as well, first-hand experience for me, watching you be trained, because I've come to the St. John Ambulance training days where they have members of the public come in just to help pretend to be patients, and you see how the St. John's Ambulance staff are trained and how they respond. And I was very much blown away by it all, because you know, we got given scripts or you know, like a piece, like you're going to be a drunk teenager. I was like, got it. So and it's the way how, you know, that everyone's having the discussion beforehand, but then seeing them switch into that work medical, I was really impressed. So it makes a lot of sense that did prepare you. Like I can imagine that helping a lot.
Hugely. And a lot of the St. John Ambulance members are healthcare professionals, or go into healthcare professionals from doing that, even from a young age. So that's really great.
Going off onto the way that you've been prepared, I mean, nothing can necessarily have prepared you for what you've experienced this year. And you've worked in a hospital since this whole pandemic, from start to current. We're hoping to be near the finish, but we're definitely much still in it, where you've had COVID patients and you've had COVID wards. Would you mind telling our listeners what you've had to witness and experience, and what you've basically had to go through, I guess?
I think it's so difficult to quantify sort of just what we've all been through.
Right.
You go into it and then you get past that little hurdle and then you forget what you've just been through. And I think that's a coping mechanism, isn't it? And what we've got to remember is that we went into 2019 winter in the NHS, sort of geared up to deal with winter. And normally it's horrendous and there's loads of flu patients, but you know there's going to be an end point. So then going into sort of January, February, March 2020 time, we're normally in that recovery period, coming out of winter and actually starting to settle down again. So from 2019 winter to now, we've not really had any recovery period. The whole sort of NHS has just literally been surviving and living on what we can at the moment. So it's really difficult to sort of keep going, particularly when you haven't had that lull. Yes, okay, we had August, September, which was a little bit easier.
Could you explain your role as well? Because you have quite an important role to play in the wards that you work on as well. You're not just and I don't mean this in disrespect to anyone who is working, but you're not just like I don't know the correct term. You're not just a
Because if you think about it, we're 36 bedded ward, and trying to deal with 36 families and next of kin, finding out how their family member is, which is absolutely the norm, is so difficult to keep on top of, particularly when you're short staffed and you're busy already. So there's a few ways we went about it, and we managed to get a few iPads and ward mobiles so that we could encourage Zoom calls with patients and phone calls, etc., when we can. And we'd spend time in the evenings after dinner time, just sort of getting Zoom and Teams set up so that they could speak to their families and their families could see them, because for them, their family member is in this unknown entity of a hospital where COVID is, they don't know, is everywhere essentially. So then they think the worst, which is totally understandable. So it's our job to kind of reassure them and say, actually, no, we are not a COVID ward, we are a green ward. But it's only so much you can say that's going to reassure them. And I think I've had a lot of families just crying down the phone to me, and that's difficult to take, but if I can give that little bit of reassurance they're actually okay and that we are doing everything we can.
So obviously that's talking about patients who have been safe, or they're COVID free, I guess we're saying. What has it been like when you've had to work with a COVID patient? Because I'm sure that probably varies, but for a COVID patient to have been admitted to hospital, I'm sure that's a complete game change. And so, I mean, can you tell us what that is like? What does a COVID patient look like, or what do they experience?
And I think it's strange because when we first encountered COVID patients, you sort of gear yourself up, don't you? You get everything on, you get a PPE on, and think, right, they're behind that door, they've got COVID, and you sort of psych yourself out a little bit. And when you go in the room, they're just a normal person. Do you know what I mean? And it's not it doesn't come across as scary, but then there's times where they're incredibly unwell, and that's when you walk in there and think, God, I've really got to pull my socks up, and the treatment that I'm going to give has got to be like absolute 100% perfect, because we are there to essentially save their lives. And there's times where you think, oh God, have I got my PPE on right? Am I going to make them cough too much, etc.? And part of physiotherapy is that you make patients cough and you want them to cough.
Right.
And it's called aerosol generating procedure, and that's then when COVID is then released. So then we're in a room with someone that we're wanting to cough and wanting to get up as much as they can. So it's one of the kind of most, not dangerous, but prevalent ways of obviously spreading COVID, and we're in there. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to put your own anxieties and things behind you and actually think, no, I'm here to treat the patient. But there's so many times where we wanted to just go, you can't do this, and it gets to you too much to the point where you're thinking, can I do my job? But actually you get through it and it's fine, and you get out and you're fine. But the poor patients, bless them, that's at the end of the day, we're there for them.
Have you had many patients where it hasn't worked, having the worst outcome?
Yeah, I was called out to a patient in the middle of the night, and they said that, I won't go into too much medical detail, but he was essentially deteriorating. He's on the maximum oxygen he could be on. We need you to come and see if you can do anything, kind of thing. And so I went in, and obviously drive in thinking, what can I do? What can I go through? I actually spoke to one of my colleagues who'd been looking after that patient that morning, so that was helpful. And then I spoke to the doctor and did a few things, and they're on non-invasive ventilation, so it's a mask that blasts air into the lungs, in sort of layman's terms.
Right.
To try and increase the oxygenation as much as possible, but that was maxed out. I then had to step away and actually say, I don't think there's anything else I can do. And that was really hard, because the nurse was there thinking, oh, the physio's here, they're gonna help. And this patient sort of grabbing the bed and chucking away, respiratory rate ridiculous. And then to turn around and say, I'm not sure how much more I can do as a physio is awful.
Heartbreaking. Yeah.
So then we spoke to the doctor, and we made a decision together that it was probably the best decision for the patient. And obviously it's his job to discuss with family, etc. And then you write your notes and you go home, and it's the drive home where you think, God, did I do everything right? And I'm so glad I spoke to my colleague, because I think that settled me in that it's two of our brains thinking the same thing rather than just me. But there's no way to sort of like deal with it. You just got to keep thinking over and over and over, and there's no way to really get over that. You just get used to it, which is awful. It's a horrible thing to think of. But I mean, my heart goes out to all the incredible physios that are working on respiratory wards every single day.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I work on a trauma ward and I see patients on call, but the physios that have to go in every single day and do that they are incredible. And I often send texts saying, are you okay? Just sending a hug if you need one, or do you need to talk or anything like that. So I do consider myself lucky that I am normally on a green ward.
You're providing a lot of support for people with their anxieties and stuff, but how do you combat that for yourself? Like, you've got a lot going on personally as well in your own life. You know, you've got your family to protect as well. You're married and you're pregnant, which is amazing to tell the world. We're so excited for you. But that's terrifying. You're around COVID, you're around sick patients, and you're trying to find not only a way to protect your family and yourself, but you're wanting to keep the patients going. How on earth do you manage with your own anxieties about this?
I think talking is the best therapy any of us can do, and I always make sure that we are talking to staff and they're talking to us, and I have an open door policy, so the door's always open to the office. So whatever they want to come in, do they want to come and cry? Do they want to come and tell me something funny? Do they want to tell me anything? And I'm there to support them, because they're seeing it every day, all the time. And actually, we forget that as healthcare professionals, we're very good at leaving our own personal problems and life at the door of the ward, and just putting on our hat and going, right, I'm a nurse, I'm a physio, I'm an OT, I'm going to get on my day. But actually, also all those things going on in their own life sort of impacts that as well. So it's really important that when they are in hospital, they can talk about it.
Right. But what about
how do you have time for that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, as in, like, everyone's overworked. Everyone is, like you mentioned earlier, like just having to keep all the family updated. You've got surely it must be so hard to find the time to stop and be like, actually, my own head is about to explode. I need to have a debrief. I need to speak to my manager. How does that?
Well, thankfully, our management team are incredible, and I do have a really good support system with the management team. We all know when each other is struggling, and we made a pact in the second lockdown and said that we are all allowed to lose it, and we are all allowed to have a bad week. We've just got to make sure we know it's not at the same time. So we've said, okay, it's my week, it's your week, etc. And we all know when the other one is struggling, so we can pull you aside. Or the amount of walks I've got done with my manager is incredible, just around the hospital grounds, just talking things through. And it might not even be talking about COVID, just something different. It's just a change of environment, a change of scenery. And that's one of the best ways I find of coping with it is, you walk around the hospital grounds and cry to your manager, but it gets it out.
Right.
Talking therapy is the best way to deal with it. And there's sometimes where you can't at the time, in which then I'll come home. And I'm really lucky that obviously Martin, my husband, is in the healthcare as well, so he understands. So we give each other sort of half an hour to talk, whether it's good, bad, ugly, whatever, before we make dinner, carry on with the evening, etc., so that we can.
That's lovely.
So do you, when you get home, so obviously we understand you have this amazing support system at work where you do have the open door policy, everyone has to speak about what they're feeling, so that you take it in turns. But when you're at home, and Martin also isn't, like you said, he's in that healthcare thing, how do you get an escape from it? Like, do you have a rule like that, right, no COVID talk after 5:30? Like, how does it work?
Well, I've definitely said I'm not watching the news, and I've encouraged him to not watch the news. But actually, when you are at work and you live it and you breathe it every single day, you do want to come home and watch it and listen to it. So we very much will let each other vent and blow off and talk about whatever's worrying us, but then we very much then stop and say, well, let's move on, kind of thing, and talk about something completely different, or what we've got planned for the weekend. Not that you can do much at the moment, but
it's such a British mentality, isn't it? The whole keep calm, carry on. Like
and there's been times where, don't get me wrong, first lockdown was awful, but it was new and we were all in it together and we were working out together, whereas second and third lockdown, you just thought you're so fatigued, there's not much more that can happen. It still makes you stop and take a breath, and you realize just how stressed you are.
It's clearly affected your mental health, and it affected all of the staff's mental health. Do you think, on reflection, is there anything that now the NHS, or what can they add to the training now, do you think? Is there anything that can be done? Can you prepare for something so horrific?
I think what we've learned over the last sort of 12 months is so much more about wellbeing and staff's needs and our own needs, really. What my trust have done, which is honestly, they've been amazing with it, is over the last sort of 10 months is introduce things sort of weekly to be able to help us get used to that. So we've got a wellbeing officer who visits the wards regularly and talks to the staff in small groups about how they're managing, strategies to cope with it, ways of sort of dealing with unwanted stress or worry or their family situations, etc. Because they realise that obviously we are humans at the end of the day and we can't keep coming back fighting without offloading. We've also got a wobble room. So where they first started that in the first lockdown, so you could go in there if you feel like you're having a funny moment, bit of a wobble, go in there, calm music, candles. I think there's a few free gifts as well that would really help. Yeah, really help. So that was lovely. And then lastly, which is really lovely, is we've got Project Wingman, which is the Virgin Atlantic staff who obviously been furloughed at the moment are coming in and provide. It's called the Wingman Lounge, and it's in one of our lecture theatres. And I think they've been obviously trained a little bit more about counselling, wellbeing, etc. And they're going through chatting to staff, making sure they're okay. You just pop in whenever you want. There's Lego, you can do Lego, you can
so
listen
cool.
to music, you can have some food, obviously all social distance, but it's just lovely to know. And we're helping them, obviously having been furloughed. So that's really nice. It's a really nice project.
Is this a project that's just happening like exclusively with your hospital, or is it happening across the country?
I think Project Wingman is happening across the country, I think.
That's good.
We're just very lucky, obviously, being close to Heathrow.
That would make it quite handy.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know in our own personal conversations, we've had discussions about people in our lives that the way that they've conducted themselves throughout COVID. Has any of your relationships, whether that's with family, relatives, or with friendships and stuff, or even co-workers outside of the hospital, have they been affected at all? Is there been any sort of conflict or, different opinions to do with how to act in the pandemic? Have you had any struggles with that?
I think mainly family-wise, we've all been on the same page that stick to the rules. You've got to do what you've got to do to get this country and actually save the NHS and save lives, really, like you said, like everyone says. But there obviously have been occasions on social media where you see friends that are not necessarily sticking to the rules or bending them slightly, and it can be incredibly frustrating.
Do you feel like it's insulting?
I think so, yeah. It's like you're not seeing what we're seeing. Can you please stop? If the population knew what it was like and saw what it was like in a hospital, they would think twice about sort of breaking the rules or bending them. And it's so tough because I know people's well-being in lockdown goes down for everyone, and I understand that obviously people struggle, and that's absolutely fair enough. And it's just trying to balance that with, obviously, look, come on guys, we are in a pandemic in lockdown.
I feel like that must be so conflicting for people like yourself and in the medical profession, where they're aware of mental health, they're aware of how important that is, but they're also aware that this is a physical thing that needs to be combated by everyone staying home and not making this worse and not stressing, the NHS. So that must be so incredibly frustrating for you to try and navigate how you're meant to feel about all of this. But I feel like the biggest emotion that we can only imagine is frustration and anger when you're seeing that. I mean, we feel it, and we're not even medical.
Exactly.
Not key workers.
I mean, we've all had conversations together about how frustrating it is when you see people breaking the rules. But I always try and err on the side of, okay, what's going on in their life? But actually, at the end of the day, the big picture is we are in a pandemic. Patients are passing away. And this is a serious thing. So, come on, stick to the rules. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's the way you conduct yourself in terms of if you're splashing that all over social media, that you're meeting up with your friends and you're having a meal, you're having them around for drinks.
Yeah.
That's a bit different to, I'm really struggling mentally. I need my mum to come round, or I don't know. That to me, I think that's where the difference is.
Definitely.
Is that if you're getting a group of friends together and you're like, oh, I'm so fed up of this, I'm so done with COVID, it's like, no, it's not done because you're bored of it. And it's not like, oh, you really fancy a porn star martini, so I'm going to go out and have cocktails. No, that's what blew my mind was as soon as we almost got the green light, people running out to bars, and I'm like, are you serious? And posting about it everywhere, that really got to me.
I don't know if you saw, Chloe, Jess and I spoke about this the other day, that there was I don't remember the name, but there was a woman in Dubai from the UK who was on, I think this morning or something, the one with
Oh my gosh, yeah, I saw it.
yes. And she was classing herself, a woman who is an influencer, who is taking considers herself a key worker because she takes photos of herself abroad to
boost morale,
motivate people. How does that make you feel?
I just think it's absolutely absurd. Do you know what I mean? Like, boost morale, go and get a Chinese takeaway. You don't need, like, people boost morale in different ways, but I do not need to see photos that have been influenced in Dubai.
Yeah, a woman in a bikini on a camel in the desert. Like, that's not, who's that motivating in the UK?
It's just a different world. Like I said to you a while ago, like, I feel like I'm going to war every day when I'm going to work, and that is not in the same category as boosting morale. I'm sorry.
Absolutely not.
No.
But in general, how do you think the public have conducted themselves during the pandemic? And have you personally, like at work, have you witnessed any like disrespectful behaviour, and did you react to it if you have?
Thankfully at work we've all been pretty good, actually, and obviously at the start it was difficult to get into the habit of doing it and social distancing and wearing your PPE and things, but now it's just like second nature. People don't come in more than 2 meters, and if they do, they've got PPE on. So I think at work it's been absolutely fine, and I think all in all, I think we've done pretty well with the pandemic in terms of lockdown. I think that we potentially could have come out of lockdown a lot later and not sort of stopped it so soon. And
are you talking about the first one?
Yeah. I think that was
because we're on like number 3 now, so
I think the thinking about the economy and everything was obviously the reason for potentially coming out of lockdown sooner, to save the economy and all the whole eat out, dine out to help out and things.
Does that frustrate you? Because obviously in the medical profession, the whole point is to preserve life, not to preserve financial.
Absolutely. And actually, I don't have much opinion about government and lockdown and things, because I just try to stay out of it and just do my job. But that is something I think, no, we should have stayed in it for longer, got the numbers right down so that we don't have to do it again and again, because things like patients' lives, the population's well-being, all of that is just completely ruined now because of we were potentially saving the economy initially.
Yeah, because you're probably getting all these surges like over and over again, whereas do you reckon like if we were locked down, then you would have hopefully have seen more of a decline, and that would have relieved you a lot more and all of the people at work.
Exactly.
I think I've always been of the opinion as well that money can always be made, like that can come, it comes and goes, whereas you can't bring back a life, and I it's easier said than done. I know I'm not in the medical profession, I'm not in government, I'm not at all involved in financial things at all, so it's very easy for me to comment, and I don't think that any of the jobs are easy at all, but I think it's a good case to put forward of how things have been handled. I think
yeah, absolutely. I think it could have been done better. We've been dealt the hand we've done, and we've got to deal with it, and I think this third lockdown, obviously I don't think we've been locked down as much as we potentially were in March. In that people,
I completely agree. It feels so much more laxed.
Yeah, it really does. And you think about the amount of cars on the road in March was practically zero, but now it's just a normal day. And I think
I don't understand why. I thought that the rules are the same. Am I like missing something, or is everyone else?
But it's people portraying their job as essential. And before it was the unknown. No one knew about it. Everyone wanted to stay inside. They were scared. Now we know more about it. We know what it's about. We know how it's being dealt with. We've got the vaccine. People are a lot more sort of potentially blasé about it, which is
what are your opinions on the vaccine?
I think it's amazing. I think the fact that we've turned this around in sort of less than 12 months is incredible. And actually, I understand why people are skeptical about it, particularly the speed that it's come out. If everyone understood what goes into a vaccine, and actually things like the flu has turned around in a year because they have to take the various strains and create a vaccine. And any new vaccines, the difficulty is that they come across barriers in every sort of step of getting it going. And that can take months, that can take years, which is why vaccines normally take quite a long time to be produced. And actually, the whole world has been working on this. The whole world wants a vaccine. So any of those barriers, any of that money constraint, any of that sort of worry about getting it out later has been completely abolished. And that's why we've got it out so soon. Personally, I think it's great. I think it's amazing. Yes, we don't have long-term data about how it affects people. We've got to go on what what the experts are saying, and obviously they have said it's safe, they've tested it properly.
I think also people forget as well, like you said, it's not actually new. It's new to us because it's been newly released, but they've been working on it for 5 years or 6 years. It's like again, I'm always giving random analogies to things, but it's almost like with makeup or things like that, where you have a base and then or perfume, you have a base and then you start adding the sort of flavors that you like or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's the same thing. And I think that information, in my opinion, should have been made key to everyone, because they just think it's something brand new and that could
and it's not
eventually
being tested because it's been really quick out and things like that. Yeah, like, which I get, and that's why I think education around the vaccine is really important.
I think so.
Definitely. And I mean, people are obviously anxious who have allergies, and I completely get that. So that's why they're obviously saying they're being cautious and saying don't have this one, have that one instead, etc. Unfortunately, I can't have the vaccine.
I was going to ask you, the next question I was going to ask was, now that you're pregnant, because I follow this account on Instagram, I don't know if you do too, called Pregnant Then Screwed. And basically
what a name. What a name.
So it's all about rights for women who are pregnant, who have had children, and just fighting for them, basically, which is amazing. And they've gone to court so many times about things. A recent one has been about working women during the pandemic and how they've been treated differently by the government in terms of pay and things like that, which is amazing. And how I can't remember if it was Rishi Sunak or someone had basically compared maternity leave to taking time off work or a holiday, which was just outrageous, mind-blowing to me, having gone through it myself or living it every day. Basically, they were talking about, there was a debate going on about whether pregnant women should be given all of the information about the vaccine and given a choice as to whether they want to take it or not, so they can make an informed decision, or if it's right to say no, they just shouldn't take it, you shouldn't be allowed to take it whatsoever. What have you got an opinion on that? Or
that's really interesting, actually. I haven't thought about it like that before. I think from my personal non-healthcare opinion, it was very much a case of, well, I'm not sure what it's going to do to the baby in the long run or how it's going to affect the development. So that's why I was hesitant to have it before they even said you can or you can't have it. And I heard that obviously I think one vaccine was better than the other if you're pregnant. So then I looked into that, and that proved to be not true as well. I think absolutely you should be given the choice. At the end of the day, it's your body. Do you know what I mean? And that's your risk to take. That's no one else's risk to take. It sounds like they're doing it to reduce the amount of kind of
cover their backs, I think.
Exactly in the long run. But I'm 100% I'm with you on that one. I think it should be a choice. And when I spoke to my midwife, very much said, look, obviously really would love to have it, would reduce my anxiety levels about it a lot. Can I have one over the other, etc.? And she said, unfortunately, they're advising that you don't have it at all. Now, I don't know what would happen if you went into a vaccine centre and said, I'm pregnant, but I still want it. I don't know whether they give it to you or not. But yeah, that have been.
But your choice would be not to take it whilst you're pregnant.
I think so, yeah. And my advice that was given, the midwife gave me advice that actually we're relying on everyone else being vaccinated to look after you, which I get to an extent as well. Yeah, I don't want it now. I wish I could have it, wish it was different timing, etc. But it isn't, so I don't want it now.
Right.
But as soon as that baby's out,
when it's having its first vaccinations, you'll be having yours.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just sort of wanted to ask, I mean, what do you want listeners to take from this? Because we got a lot of people out there who, they're struggling. They are fed up, obviously. We all are. But they need to know about what people like yourself are experiencing. What would you want them to take from this?
I think that anytime you think about, I really need to do this, or I really need to just see my friend or whatever, please just think twice, because the emotional torment and the way the hospital is at the moment is horrendous. Don't get me wrong, we're going the right direction, but I wouldn't wish it on any of my friends to see what we are seeing. And if they were seeing that daily, they would not act the way they're acting. So it's massively thinking about that. And actually, I haven't mentioned it, but aside from that, think about the families who don't get to see their dying loved ones because the rules have changed and now you can only see your dying loved one for an hour. That's absolutely awful. You want to be with them the whole time. And for me to have to say, I'm really sorry, your time is up, you've got to go, is just doesn't worth thinking about, to be honest. And I mean, we're very lucky that we have allowed that now, but at the start it was very much a case of we were having to Zoom patients who were passing away to their families, and that was the only way we could do it, and that's awful. And if they are thinking about the fact that they're struggling or breaking the rules, please think about those people that haven't had anyone with them when they're dying and passing away, and the families that have not been able to see their loved one, and the last time they saw them was when they were went into hospital. Those are the moments that really get us the most, and those are the ones I want people to keep in the forefront of their mind. It is tough, and we will get through it. We will absolutely get through it, but we need to make sure that we are doing it together and not selfishly, independently, if that makes sense.
I just think you're such superheroes. I really do. I think what all of the key workers are doing is just, it's beyond gratitude that we could ever give. You know, what you're all doing, you're saving the planet at the moment. You know, all of the people that are just in the worst shape that they'll ever be in their life. You know, it's incredible what you're doing, and just thank you from us to all of the medical staff. You're all incredible. We're wearing blue for anyone who is on our who's not looking at the YouTube. We're wearing blue for the NHS.
Can I just say also, the gratitude that we can show is by doing the right thing, and by staying at home, and by you know, the cliche line, whatever, protect the NHS, but that's exactly what we are doing by not being selfish. And if you are really struggling mentally, and my heart goes out to you, I think we've all been there at one point or another, think, is there another way that I can see my friend? Could I go for a socially distanced walk is different to I'm going to have my friend come round and we're going to just open a bottle of wine. Like, is there something that you can do, an alternative, or even just video call them?
Definitely.
You know,
this in itself, us getting to do this podcast, is a way for us to for Jess and I just to interact and have weekly chats. I love that I get to do this, and it just so happens we get to record it and release it to the world. It comes as a bonus, but it means that we get a way to chat. So it means that I'm not breaking any COVID rules to go and see Jess. I'm getting to do a call with you and Chloe, and you know, it's getting us to interact with other people in a safe way. So I think, like Jess said, think about what alternatives there are. You know, think about the way that you can entertain yourselves, because there's no excuse in 2021. The amount of entertainment that's out there, there's just no excuse. You can stay home. You can do this. For people like Chloe, you can do this. So in a bit more of a positive light, what are you looking forward to for when the pandemic's over? I mean, I'm sure the list is plentiful, but
yeah, exactly.
Is there anything like on top of your list that you want?
Do you know what? Main thing is coming around to you guys and just giving you the biggest cuddle.
I want a cuddle party so bad.
Seeing my family, cuddling my family, like just catching up on lost time. That is exactly what I want. Just being able to go to the pub or a restaurant, like with my husband, would just be amazing.
I mean, the pub's going to look a little different for you now, but
well, yeah, exactly. I'll still be on the water, but and just seeing people not struggle anymore, I guess. That'd be amazing. But I mean, can I just say one thing? I just want to give the biggest shout out to my team, because they are incredible.
Yes, do it.
And no matter what we've chucked at them in the last 12 months, they have not moaned once. They have not put up a fight. They have pulled their socks up and said, okay, tell me how to do it. What do we need to do? And for me, that is the biggest, most amazing thing that you can ever do.
Oh. Who are we shouting out? What is the hospital?
So some Ashford and St Peter's Hospital.
Yay you! Yay Ashford St Peter's Hospital! Yay! What ward are we on? Swan
Ward, yeah.
Swan ward. Yes. Well done, you. Thank you for keeping Chloe going.
Big love.
So thank you so much for this. It's been so great. And the way that we sort of wanted to just sort of wrap this up, that we ask all of our guests, is what makes up your circle. So if you are a circle, what is that made up of? Is it your family? Is it your work colleagues? Is it just an hour of not talking to anyone? What does your circle look like? What's it made up of?
My circle is my family, my friends, and my colleagues. 100%. I know a lot of people will say the same thing, but that's absolutely it. That is what keeps me going. But again, like you just said, an hour of not talking to anyone is absolute bliss at the end of the day.
It's so funny when this was even pre-pandemic, but there'd be times when I would just want to call Chloe, like when me just being random, I'll just call her whenever. But there'd be a certain hour that I knew she wouldn't pick up, and I got a pattern going. I was like, oh, she's not picking up because this is her quiet time. Like, okay, won't ever call in this hour.
Martin knows to not talk to me. He'll talk to me and he'll just get nothing. I am gone.
I think it's quite cool though that you have that discipline, like for that time allocated just for you.
Yeah, you need a boundary. You need to be like, no, this is my time. Go away.
Decision-making fatigue, just don't speak.
Yeah. So at the end of every episode, we love to dedicate each episode to a small business, a charity, or an organization. And since we have you as a guest, we have asked you to provide one. So could you please tell us about the one that you'd like to support?
Yeah, so it's obviously very relevant to this. So it's the NHS staff support line, and it's run by the Samaritans at the moment, and it opened at the start of the pandemic. And it's for any staff who are struggling with obviously the lockdown, what they're seeing, being on their own, living on their own, not seeing their family, and any of the things they're seeing at work. They can just pick up the line and call and talk, whether it be about that or any strategies they can kind of receive to try and get through it. But it's very cathartic for them as well. I'm just very lucky that it's powered by the Samaritans, obviously very influential in this area anyway. So that's kind of the one I want to plug.
Amazing. So we can put all of the details up on the screen on our YouTube video right now. You can go and check them out on our post as well on Instagram, which we'll be posting once we have released this episode. And if you go into the description in the YouTube video, all of the links will be there as well. So thank you so much, Chloe, for coming on today's episode. We can't wait to have you back and talk about mummy things and pregnancy and stuff. I'm sure that will be something great to figure out what you're going through. We can't wait to have you back. Thank you very, very much. And thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will see you for our next episode. Bye.
Bye.